everybody. Time now to talk a little NBA action. And if you had some money on the Spurs last night, well, your hair is probably on fire today. And because we saw something we had never seen before last night in the NBA Finals, a 29-point come-from-behind effort from the New York Knicks to take a 3-1 series lead over the San Antonio Spurs. Here to talk about that with me, and also what's coming up on the horizon for the Minnesota Timberwolves, my buddy, Dane Moore from the Dane Moore NBA podcast. My friend, we've been talking about this for a long time. At long last, we get you on the show. How are you, dude?
I'm good. It sounds like you might have been the person who had money on San Antonio.
Believe it or not, I did not have money on the game. I just had pure enjoyment and entertainment all over my face, and my wallet is secure, thankfully. Dane, like I said, everybody at the end of the game thinking to themselves, well, this is something I've never seen before, and it's because we've never seen it before. Just 30 points in the second half for the Spurs, seemingly got away from everything that was working for them in the first half, particularly in the half-court offense. How do you explain this from San Antonio, and what did the Knicks do to somehow steal this game?
I think it's a maturity thing, man. I mean, and I don't mean that to give San Antonio excuses, but I wouldn't even say just limited to last night. I think San Antonio has looked like a team that is playing the majority of their players who are under 24, 25 years old. And I think Victor is, as incredible of a player as he is, I feel like he's looked like a somewhat not fully matured player right now, and I think he's lacked discipline. I think you saw him miss those free throws at the end of the game, and you look on the other side of the floor with what New York is, and that is a mature team. All of the guys in their starting lineup and pretty much their entire rotation are guys who have been in the league 6, 7, 8 years. You know, Cat has been in the league for 10 years, and I don't know. Sometimes I get it reminds me of the Timberwolves sometimes when I'm watching the San Antonio team, you know, where it just kind of crumbles away and you don't totally understand it. And I think that's a maturity thing with the Timberwolves too, just being a younger team.
Karl Anthony Towns played 26 minutes last night. He was in foul trouble, which we talk about, something we're used to seeing here, especially with the Timberwolves when he was in Minnesota. There were times where he would get into foul trouble. He got in foul trouble in the first half, which certainly affected New York and what they wanted to do and why they fell behind by so much. But if I would have told you before the game that Karl Anthony Towns was going to finish with only 5 shot attempts, Dane, you would have said what?
Mistake.
Yes. Yes.
They're going to lose. I mean, it has been hard watching the fourth quarters, even prior to last night, and Karl hasn't been able to get a shot, and then it was kind of like the whole game last night, given that it started with the foul trouble there. But I just want to say this has been very cool to see Cat in this series. You know, for the two of us covering him in Minnesota for as long as we did, things like the foul trouble or complaining or just sort of mentally losing himself, that was a big piece of what defined Cat in his Minnesota tenure. And to overcome that and to see very little of that in New York in the NBA Finals it's just a kind of cool human story of growing up. Yeah. And I think it's been a fun thing to watch.
I want to focus on 2 plays in particular, and they were the 2 plays that, hey, listen, not every one play or this play defines the game, but these are the 2 plays really that everybody's talking about today. De'Aaron Fox going down to the other end of the floor after stealing the ball away. I was truly, Dane, and De'Aaron was a guy who I covered in Sacramento when he was drafted out in Sacramento, and have watched him play and develop from afar. And the lack of situational awareness in that moment for me from De'Aaron Fox blew me away. I understand. I heard what he had to say post-game, and I understand what he had to say. But as fast as he is, that ankle is not 100%. But even if it were 100%, I think that was a crucial mistake that he made, and I could not believe that he decided to put the ball up toward the rim when he could have just dribbled it out and taken a foul.
You have to know that you can finish the layup if you're going to take it there in that spot. And, like, I think, to be fair, it's good if you take that layup and you make it.
Of course.
Because if you are just going to take, like, because what he could have done is, like, pivoted out to the corner and forced them to foul them. They're up by 1 at that time. And now he has to make 2 of those free throws, right, to make it a 3-point game. So I get the instinct to go for the layup, but you got to be thinking about your angles here. You got to be thinking about that OG Anunoby has like a 7'5" or whatever wingspan,
Right.
you know, and that it shocked me in the moment of it. And I almost thought like the score was incorrect
Right.
on the ticker. I was like, what are we doing here? Man, your boy, it's been a rough series.
He is taking a lot of the
De'Aaron.
Yeah, I like him too. I think he's been battling through an ankle injury. I still believe in him as a player, but he's taking the brunt of it today. And, you know, I can't blame some of the fans for being upset with him in terms of, like we said, it's a situational awareness play that you would think a guy of his tenure would be fully understanding of, but it didn't work out in the moment. The other play that I want to talk about is the last play of the game, of course. I know that it was a 1-point game. I'm not sure how many people thought that the play call would be for Jalen Brunson to launch up a 30-footer when you're only down one. Of course, you're not exactly going to attack the paint if you think Victor Wembanyama is going to be laying back there. Was it the right decision for Victor to come out and challenge that shot? Obviously, that left a pathway for OG Anunoby to come in and make the game-winning tip.
See, I think Jalen just was like, I want to take it. I want to be the person taking the shot. And I think it ended up not being a high-quality shot that he took, but it had to be in that moment, right? I want to be the player taking the shot here. And he's a very smart player, and he knows that the smart move is to take the shot with about 2 seconds left on the shot clock. So you do have, that's what coaches teach you. Take the shot with 2 or 3 seconds right there so you have the chance for the offensive rebound.
Right.
And sometimes when that doesn't happen, we go, why did they force that shot right there? But that OG Anunoby tip in to win the game in the NBA Finals is the reason that coaches across all levels of basketball say, you put that shot up so you give your teammates a chance, because everybody's going to crash. You don't got to worry about getting back on defense, right? Like, the shot itself wasn't good, but the timing of when he took it,
sure.
I think that was sharp.
Yeah, it was a play that's going to be remembered in Knicks lore for a long, long time. Okay, let's talk about the Wolves here. Obviously, things did not go the way everybody had hoped it would go. Eliminated in the second round, 6 games by the San Antonio Spurs, and now we turn our attention to the NBA offseason. The NBA draft is coming up on June 23rd and 24th. We'll wait to see what Tim Connelly and company have in store for the NBA draft. But in the long-term vision for this team, Dane, in terms of piecing it together, the free agents are as follows. You know, Mike Conley is a free agent. Jalen Clark's a free agent. Ayo Dosunmu is a free agent. Bones Highland is a free agent. Who needs to come back? Who maybe would be nice to have back but might be on their way out the door? Whether it's a free agent, whether it's trade. I know the fans made Julius Randle, public enemy number 1 after that series against San Antonio. And I've said time and again, listen, the fans have trashed this man for 2 weeks during that series, and they think that it's just so easy to trade somebody after you just trash somebody. Why would an NBA executive be so eager to take on Julius Randle? There's so many moving parts here. Where do we begin with the offseason with this team?
Risk. I think that's the operative word here for the Wolves offseason, is to make a change to your roster so as to compete in the Western Conference Finals with Oklahoma City and San Antonio, who you are behind right now. The Timberwolves need to incur risk in the transaction game to, try and hit something and be the exponential growth, right? Because just working linearly here, if you're the Timberwolves into Anthony Edwards' prime, you are going to be at a disadvantage against Oklahoma City and San Antonio with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Victor Wembanyama, because those teams have all these draft picks. If they want to go get a guy, they can go get a guy. They have a litany of picks that they can trade. The Timberwolves do not. So what the Timberwolves have to do, in the way I read it, is use the limited assets that they do have to go for a player like a Kyrie Irving, like a Zion Williamson, like a Kawhi Leonard, players who come with risk, but also, if it hits, have a very high upside. And I just don't see, if the goal is to compete in the Western Conference and be the team representing the Western Conference in the NBA Finals next season, you need to add talent to this. You need to build this up. And given how few draft picks the Wolves do have to trade, I think the move here is risk and incurring the right amount of risk.
The number one storyline in the offseason in the NBA this offseason is going to be Giannis Antetokounmpo and where he might end up, Will he stay in Milwaukee? It's not looking like perhaps he will stay in Milwaukee. So if he doesn't, where does he go? How much does, in terms of piecing together the Timberwolves, I know some fans would love to be involved in the Giannis sweepstakes, but if Minnesota is not involved in the Giannis sweepstakes, are they going to be like everybody else and just waiting for that domino to fall first before they start piecing together their roster?
I think so. I think that's the whole league.
Yeah.
Is waiting in the transaction game for that. And also the Milwaukee Bucks owner came out on record saying that they want this to be taken care of by draft night, which is
a couple of weeks.
Less than 2 weeks from today. Yeah. So I think the good news is it's not going to be like one of those that we're waiting around the whole summer for. If this does get taken care of by the draft, or at least by the beginning of July, then the rest of the league, including the Timberwolves, can move into making the lower level moves. You know, the players who are below Giannis and signing free agents, making other types of trades there. I never really understood like how the Wolves were in the Milwaukee conversation for Giannis, given how few draft picks they have.
Right.
Like, I remember going through it at the trade deadline and being like, well, maybe if you put everything on the plate other than like Anthony Edwards, then maybe you're in this conversation here. They just have limited assets, man. You know that. And I think that makes you need to set your sights on something other than Giannis if you're the Timberwolves, and a team like Miami or Boston who has more draft pick. What would you do if you're Milwaukee? Like, why would you settle for the Timberwolves offer if you could get more from elsewhere? So I've never really understood the Giannis to Milwaukee piece, but I think you're right in saying that's the first domino that has to fall in the NBA this offseason, because of course it is. He's one of the best players in the league.
I want to ask you about Anthony Edwards. You and I have been around him ever since he's gotten here. I've been on record saying this before. I'm going to say it again. He is as good a teammate as I've seen for a young superstar in the league, maybe in all the years I've been watching the league. And the reason why I say that is because he's so quick to defer the attention off of himself in a post-game interview to talk about his teammates who played well and give credit to his teammates and his coaching staff. But I'm starting to wonder, though, Dane, is this the time and is this the point in his career where he may have to stop being the nice guy a little bit and start being a guy that may have to set the tone and put his boot up, you know what, to kind of get the best out of some of his teammates? It may not be in his personality, and of course I don't want his personality to change. It's so fun to be around. But is that maybe the next evolution of the leadership process for him?
I don't know, because I just don't think that that's his like disposition.
Yeah.
You know, on a day-to-day basis. I think what he needs to do from a leadership standpoint and from a teammate standpoint is be a better teammate on the floor. Not to say he's a bad teammate, but the type of teammate, and given his skill set, that can manipulate the defense, the opposing defense, and create open shots for his teammates. And right now, Ant is a 10 out of 10 individual scorer, right? He added the mid-range to his game. We know what he can do at the rim, and he led the league in three-point makes a season ago. Those are all individual scoring attributes, right? His assist total dropped this season as he moved into the point guard role. That doesn't really make sense. I think for Ant, if he wants, and if the Timberwolves organization, again, wants to elevate themselves to this San Antonio, Oklahoma City level, yes, things need to happen with the roster. But Anthony Edwards, he will be 25 next season, and I think it's time for him to be the player who leads in the locker room and is supportive in the ways that you're talking about, but also on the floor is intense and thoughtful. Like, thoughtful about what we need to do in this moment to win this game. And I wouldn't doubt Ant, because every season he's added an additional skill set, but they've been basketball skills. And I think this one is interesting, man, because this is a between the ears skill set.
Yeah.
This is a basketball IQ skill set that it's the next horizon, you know,
Sure.
and when the Wolves are great, Anthony Edwards will have crossed that horizon.
Last one for you. We mentioned it a couple of times. The NBA draft is going to be coming up. The Wolves have a late first-round pick. They got a late second-round pick. As of right now, we don't know if they're going to even be picking on the night. Who knows what Tim Connolly is going to do on draft night. But if they stay put, Where do you think in the draft this team might go in terms of position, need? What perhaps are you thinking maybe for the Wolves when the draft rolls around in a couple of weeks?
Well, I'll just start with I highly doubt that they draft.
Yeah, I kind of have the same feeling, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Again, it's just the limited amount of assets. The picks that they can trade right now are this pick at the end of the first round here coming up in June and 2033. So those are your 2 first-round picks that you can trade right now. I think you got to use that in a trade, or you need to trade it for a future first-round pick so you can use it in a trade later. What would you want the Timberwolves to draft at 28, right? I mean, they need a point guard, but is that point? I mean, we just did this with Rob Dillingham. It normally takes a couple of years for a point guard in the NBA to be able to be a point guard in the NBA. You know, I wouldn't see a glaring position that you would be like, oh yeah, take a guy 28th overall and put him in and he starts and he's in the rotation. Also, Chris Finch is the coach, not really a guy who extends a long leash for young players. I mean, I get it. They're a contender. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but like, he did not play Rob Dillingham very much. He did not play Terrence Shannon Jr. very much. Their most recent first-round picks. This draft night just screams to me when trades start happening for the Timberwolves and for the rest of the league.
Well, we certainly can't wait to see it all unfold. Dane Moore of the Dane Moore NBA podcast. You can find him on X, Instagram. Check out the podcast on YouTube. Our buddy Kyle makes an appearance every once in a while on the pod as well. It's fun stuff. He does such a great job covering the team. Go follow him and all this stuff. Dane, buddy, great to have you, man. Will I see you at the draft?
I'll be there.
All
I'll
right.
be there, man.
Very good.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Pleasure having you on. That's Dane Moore of the Dane